mustard is good, but Dijon mustard is way better. If you're new to making mustard, this quick homemade Dijon recipe is a stress-free place to start. Better yet, you're only 4 ingredients away from having this tangy and savory flavor on your sandwich or your shelf in no time. In just a few minutes, I'll show you how to make this quick, preservative-free, small batch homemade Dijon recipe and show you how to preserve it using a 10-minute water bath that requires no special equipment. Let me shamelessly entice you with reasons why you want to whisk, stir, spread, and dollop this quick Dijon into your favorite breakfast, lunch, and dinner recipes. Let's start with breakfast. Stirring Dijon into a make-ahead breakfast strata is the perfect way to start your weekend or the day off right. This one-pan breakfast or brunch casserole uses fresh or even leftover bread chunks topped with crispy bacon, cheese, and green onion. Drop in a dollop of your Dijon, whisk your eggs, and pour the mixture on top, allowing the bread to soak up this tangy, savory flavor overnight. The next morning, all you'll have to do is pop it in the oven for 25 minutes and pair it with a cup of coffee. Don't you look fancy? Now let's talk lunch. My family absolutely loves this creamy garlic Dijon sauce chicken recipe that uses pan-seared chicken thighs, fried bacon crisps, and a handful of spinach to create a one-pan meal. Nothing compares to a sauce made from scratch, and this one takes minutes, not hours, to create. You'll immediately appreciate the combination of its tangy and robust profile against the backdrop of spicy notes that really delivers a massive flavor punch to this dish. And the convenience of capturing this taste in an easily emulsified texture manages to make your everyday, sometimes boring, meals feel and taste more sophisticated. Homemade Dijon provides all the right finishing notes for your soups, sides, salads, and almost any main dish. And serving this over a bed of pasta to soak in the Dijon sauce doesn't hurt either. Speaking of salads, let's add some va-va-voom to your vinaigrette. All you'll do is take a mason jar and combine pure maple syrup, apple cider vinegar, your Dijon mustard, and garlic. Give things a quick shake to emulsify. Next, prepare your salad and add your favorite toppings. Now pour your Dijon vinaigrette over your salad and tell me that ain't good. If you haven't had pork chops with Dijon cream sauce, you've got to try it. It's the best way to take plain pork chops to a whole new level by simmering them in this creamy Dijon sauce. You'll find this sauce so good that if you're too relaxed at the table, you might just lick the plate. Start by browning your pork chops on both sides. Then add chicken broth, and a spoon or two of Dijon. Let me tell you, this Dijon is what takes this dish over the top. Allow everything to simmer for a few minutes, then toss in some sliced petite potatoes. Transition your pan to the stove and bake for another 20 minutes. On this night, I added crunchy dill fermented carrots and dinner was done, delicious and nutritious. This is where I enjoy using my fresh herbs from my garden to really capture seasonal taste. Spread Dijon on your salmon, top with panko breadcrumbs for a bit of a crunch, and coat with fresh or dried herbs. Ending presentation will give you a colorful, bright meal that not only looks attractive but tastes great and is healthy and low calorie too. I paired this meal with a side of fermented cauliflower. this is our first time meeting, hi, I'm Cassandra from the blog becomingafarmgirl.com, where I share canning recipes and ways to live a farm fresh life without land or livestock. Don't worry about writing anything down, the link to the printable directions is below. Or if you're a returning friend that enjoys my canning videos, you can automatically receive every recipe straight to your inbox each time I post a video. It's strictly the recipe post where I go a bit more into depth about things. It's not a newsletter. That link's below too. Also, stay posted because in a couple of minutes I'm gonna jump back in and we'll talk about canning safety, recipe tips, and some of my other recommendations. Now let's get started. Begin by dicing your onion. And don't throw away those onion skins. Instead, place them in a reusable freezer bag until you have enough to flavor your stocks and broths. Next, measure out your garlic. And white wine. You can use cooking or drinking wine. Then combine onion, garlic, and wine in a small pan and bring to a boil over medium-high heat. Allow ingredients to come to a gentle boil for 5 to 7 minutes, stirring occasionally. Now it's time to strain the solids and set aside in a small bowl. Measure out your mustard powder and pour into a medium-sized bowl. Use a whisk to blend the wine mixture into the dry mustard. Fully combine until most of the clumps are gone. Now pour the mixture back into the saucepan, adding honey, oil, salt, and your choice of hot sauce. Return the pan to the stove and bring to a boil for 10 to 12 minutes, stirring frequently. While our mustard is coming to a boil on the stove, I wanted to jump back in and share some of my recipe tips. First, my intent in sharing canning recipes is to show you how easy it is to make your own healthier, better tasting, and usually cheaper pantry items. And to show you that canning is not outdated. But above all, I want you to be successful and safe in your canning practices. For this reason, I only use published recipes from sources like the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the National Center for Home Food Preservation, and companies like Ball and Bernardin. The recipe that I share with you today is one that I adapted from the book, The Complete Book of Small Batch Preserving, over 300 delicious recipes to use year-round. This book has been a bestseller in food preservation for decades, and I highly recommend it. It's definitely in my top 5. If you're a small batch canner that usually processes between 6 and 10 jars. This cookbook really covers it all. It has jams, jellies, marmalades, conserves, relishes, chutneys, sauces, vinegars. I mean, there's so much in here, and I love that about this book. The only drawback is that it doesn't have pictures, but each of the recipes comes with a detailed description that's about a paragraph, and so it really paints a picture of what the flavor profile is going to be. I've included the link to where you can find this book in the description box below. It's right on Amazon. All right, y'all, so I'm gonna look down some of my other recipe notes. And the first is, do not exceed preserving Dijon mustard above 4-ounce canning jars. So you wanna stick with this size. And this is because the high starch content in mustard seeds and powder, it just makes it difficult for heat to penetrate the center of the jar during the canning process. And so in order to ensure that your mustard is safely preserved and is shelf stable, all tested and approved recipes limit the size to 4 ounces. You may have caught on that I was using an 8-ounce jar in some of the footage that I was sharing with you earlier, and that's only because I did not can that recipe. So I just went ahead after I made the batch and I set that aside to just go ahead and use. It just allows me to save a lid, and yeah, so I did not can what you saw me using earlier. Our next recipe note is to stick with dry white wine. Any dry or cooking wine will do as long as it's not a sweet variety like a Riesling or a Moscato. Another note is that yellow onion and shallots can be used exclusively or combined. All right, y'all, so after you've combined all of the ingredients in a slow stove simmer, I implore you to lick the spoon. But if that feels too uncivilized for you, at least stick your pinky in there and take a little bit of a taste test. Now, I'm being a little funny, but it's true because the best homemade Dijon recipe is really something that is catered to your taste. Now, the hot sauce that I used in this batch was a roasted red bell pepper hot sauce, but I always switch them up. One of the things that my husband likes is this type of like sriracha that he likes to buy, and that's really good too. That's what I like about making your own homemade Dijon. You can switch up the flavors, but please make sure any hot sauce that you add is dairy-free. You may also be wondering why this recipe uses powdered mustard instead of seeds. And the answer is because it's quick. And substituting powdered mustard for mustard seeds doesn't give off a discernible taste difference unless you're using or making like a fermented mustard. Now, I am all for mostly from scratch cooking, but when you use mustard seeds, you gotta soak them for 24 hours and yada yada. But when you use powdered mustard, you can whip up a batch on demand and it's ready to preserve within minutes. I have the research articles on my blog, but both dry or powdered mustard are both 100% made from ground mustard seeds. You'll see those names when you go to the grocery store, sometimes used interchangeably. The difference between dry and powdered mustard is purely a marketing tactic commercial brands use to distinguish between their own products. All right, that's all I've got. Let's check back in on things. You want the mixture to thicken slightly. Now it's time to ladle the mustard into the jars, leaving a 1/4 inch of headspace. Remove any air bubbles by running a long plastic or wooden skewer between the jar and the mustard. Wipe the rims of the jars with vinegar to remove any spillage, which can prevent your jars from creating a seal. Secure the rings to the top of your jar until they are fingertip tight, secured but air still has room to pass through. Using a jar rack or plate, lower the jars into the bottom of your water bath canner. Pour in enough water to ensure that it covers at least 2 inches above your jars. Place the lid on your pot. Bring the water to a full boil for 10 minutes. Use a jar lifter to remove the jars out of the water and let them cool on a towel undisturbed for a minimum of 12 hours. As your jars cool, you'll hear the jars making clicking pops. Leave the jars undisturbed on a towel for a minimum of 12 to 24 hours. After that, you can confirm that the jars have sealed by removing the rings. A sealed jar will remain secured to the jar without the rim and be slightly indented in the center. If you're craving more canning recipes, consider watching my canning playlist next and join me here weekly. I'll see you in my kitchen or garden soon.